Hello and welcome to another episode of Season 3 in Corgi Town, USA. I am Candy. In my lap is Chuckles.
I am Catherine. Somewhere by my feet is Digby,
We might lose broadcast because Digby and Mortimer are
chasing each other around the room.
making a racetrack. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then we have Hammer here and Booger, who is always very happy to see Digby.
She's never happy to see Digby.
The side eye is strong. So, we thought, see, Kat has a friend who does animal CPR.
Animal CPR, animal first aid, and human stuff too.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
We care about the humans too.
All right,
we
fine.
love our doggy and kitty friends and
That's right.
animal friends, but yeah, we care about the people too.
Well, the thing of it is, we all know that we should learn CPR, and we do to some degree in health class.
Yeah,
Most of us know, ABC, airway breathing compressions for CPR. We know certain things.
clear the airway.
Clear the air, right? Airway breathing, compressions. So, but we don't know them for our fur babies.
Yeah,
is the bottom line. We really don't think about it. We don't know about it, and that's why we brought Gina on today.
And the anatomy is different.
The anatomy is very
So
different. So let's
bring her on.
bring her on.
Okay. Dina, welcome.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to educate us and educate our audience and this very important information.
Absolutely. Glad I could be here.
Yeah. So, and we have some questions for you. But before we get too deep into that, briefly, can you tell us a little bit about you and your background? And then also, you have rescue dogs, right?
Absolutely. Never had anything different. Always been rescue dogs.
Yeah.
I'm a mom and a wife. My kids are grown, but now a grandma. Got a little 2-year-old that I take care of an awful lot, human. But we've always had fur babies, and currently we have a bully mix. He's the low rider, the short-legged guy, but he's
Aw,
stocky and runs like a brick. He's so much fun.
I love it.
And then we've got another one. He was actually thrown out of a truck at a park, believe it or not, about 8 years ago. Yeah, witnessed. And anyway, then the younger one is actually bigger because he's about 66 pounds. Then we've got an 80-pound Thai Ridgeback and Lab
Wow.
mix.
Oh my
Thai
goodness.
Ridgebacks are a little smaller than Rhodesians, but pretty much same concept. Big guy. He moves like a cat, and both are guard dogs, so it's pretty awesome.
So agile, even though large.
Oh, they move like cats. Yeah, you know how the cats will jump and like flip in the air? That's what he does. It's crazy.
Especially from a large animal that size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed, I gotta tell you.
Well, thank you for saving them.
Yes.
We got him from the Pinal County shelter, so yeah.
He's a shelter pup. He's
Mhm.
done some hard time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I have let's see, I've had 7 and all but 3, one of them is an accident. Mortimer, you call my accidental pregnancy. Not mine. It was another. But anyway, when you rescue animals, they find
Right.
you, right? People find
Mhm.
you. And but all but 3 have been rescues.
Yeah.
And Booger is probably the one. I don't know. Hammer's having some medical issues they're coming up, which his is like structural. So hip
Okay.
dysplasia, and he's in a cart, and we've done surgery and hydrotherapy and things like that. But Booger is probably the worst one as far as worst for wear. When I got her, her teeth were black. I don't think she had
Oh,
ever been inside, like ever.
Yeah.
yeah.
She was so we thought she was fat when we got her, but her coat was so full of flea dirt that
Oh,
when she was dipped, she was actually quite skinny and undernourished.
Yes.
mhm.
We've had most of her teeth removed, and she's been living the good life since
She has.
2014.
As I'm looking over at her, she has been living a good life for almost 10 years now.
Other than the complaints about Digby being in her face, and
Yes.
the
Digby's
boys
always
love
been
her.
close.
They love her, and she's like, "Get away from me." But other than that,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I am familiar with the both heartbreaking side of rescue as well as what a rewarding experience it is and how wonderful it is to see him flourish.
Well, Buster is our bully mix, and he's the one that was witnessed being tossed out of the truck at the park, right? And he's when he first arrived here, we weren't going to keep him. We were trying to get him into another rescue because at the time we had two very old dogs, and I just didn't want another, especially a big one, running around knocking him over, that kind of thing. But he had clearly been abused. We're guessing he was made to wear those big heavy chains because he had gashes in his neck that were starting to get infected, and it was just, again, heartbreaking, right? But yeah, 8.5 years later, he's definitely living the good life. Some behavior issues probably we're pretty sure stem from how he had been handled in the beginning, and we've gotten through most of it, but there's still a couple things that we've just never been able to get past with him. So it's not one of those dogs that I can take for a nice walk, but he has a great time in our big backyard and plays with the other guys. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he found you.
I'm glad he found you. And my quick PSA: absolutely, rescue dogs are amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Digby.
Digby is a rescue dog, and he's a very different story. A lovely, lovely couple adopted him. Unfortunately, the husband became ill, could not take care of him anymore, and Candy took him in. Came from a good home. Candy
Yeah.
gave him a good home. Then he came to me. He is very attached to me. That's a happy rescue story.
Yeah.
Right.
Breaks my heart to leave. The PSA is, for everyone out there listening to the show, rescues are amazing and they have a background that you don't know about. Please be prepared when you bring home a rescue dog. Be prepared. That's his or her forever home.
We highly recommend. Earlier in season 3, we released an episode with Melissa of East Coast Corgi Rescue,
Yes.
and we asked her to give us an unfiltered look at what that looks like, because shelters and rescue groups are full right now. Everyone is at the end of their rope. There are a lot of COVID puppies, people that got dogs that didn't realize that life might change in a couple of years when they got them, and didn't do the research on breeds or where to get a well-bred dog, or et cetera, et cetera. Lots of stories. But she and her whole team and about all the rescue groups that I talked to are going through the same thing. So we highly recommend that episode for anyone who hasn't listened or watched. It's a very helpful perspective to realize about rescues, and when you get a dog, how it is a lifetime commitment, be it rescue or otherwise. And when you make the decision to get a dog, it's not just the dog's life, which we're very pro dog's life here. That's the first thing we consider, but it also affects other people.
That's right.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of that is what we talk about in the longer version of our training class, is about that being prepared for everything, their entire life, your entire life, what's going to happen if something happens to you, choices, end of life, all of that sort of thing. But yeah, when you're bringing an animal of any kind into your home, or a rescue, to be honest, because the classes we teach are designed for pet professionals as well. If you're bringing an animal into a business like a groomer or anything like that, you need to be fully prepared to handle everything with that. So yeah.
Let's get into it. I'm sorry. I'm very good at going off the cuff and going into
It's
rabbit
okay.
Let me bring us back. Let's talk about this. Thank you for educating us on that training. So talking about CPR specifically and the training, why would you recommend, the short answer, someone get this training?
So in the pet world, we do not have a 911 system. We just don't. And again, when you bring an animal into your home or your business or whatever, you become the 911 system. And
Right.
some situations, definitely time is going to be of the essence. And, okay, you get a little cut or scrape or something, absolutely no big deal. You can handle things like that at home or in the groomer's store, office, whatever, salon. But some things are not going to be like that. And if you don't do something very quickly, you're going to have a bad outcome. And that's what we try to prevent. We always hope that, these major things like CPR never are needed,
Right.
but it could be a thing. And when we talk about it in our classes, in the pet classes, unfortunately, this is literally a last resort for those animals, because you don't have that help to come and back you up like we have in the human world. Trust me, it's a different mindset when I have to go from teaching a human class to teaching a pet class, because in the human class I'm like, oh yeah, call 911 and then do this thing. No, it's very different,
That's
when you're
not a
talking.
step you have. Yeah.
It's missing in the chain of survival, like, so yeah. So it's again about that preparedness and commitment to those animals. Obviously, the three of us, we care, but
Yeah.
it's strange. It's also an awareness that's missing in the just out in the public. Interestingly, I also found out that my class can be taken for someone who has received a pet related or animal related ticket in some cities. I'm not going to say which ones, but anyway, yeah, just like driving ticket, you can take a class. Yeah, you can take my class.
Okay, so pet related ticket. Are
Why
we
would you
talking
get a
about?
pet related ticket?
Are you
What
talking
the
about
heck
abuse?
did you do to get a pet related ticket?
It wasn't me, but I've had some folks, like one guy actually, he left his dog in his car. Some of them, I'm not sure, in my opinion, were warranted, because the particular city in question was taking the word of a neighbor, and it wasn't witnessed by a police officer or any official. But one of them had to do with the length of the leash. One of them had to do with, even though the dog didn't leave the owner's property, he wasn't on a leash.
Mm.
Um, then I had one that I think there was more to the story, but the person told me they touched a police horse. Usually they warn you, so I think there was a lot more going on there. But
Um,
just saying, it's
Those are
another thing.
those are scenarios I never would have thought of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's perspective is everything, and you learn these things.
Right.
Mhm.
So, to all of our listeners, check the laws in your area. I mean, obviously, do not leave your dog in the car. Do not leave your child in the car, cat in the car. Uh,
I would like to think our viewers, listeners are
Yeah.
like us.
are like us. Uh, Running around without a leash on the property. We have an acre. The boys run around on the acre.
This
Outside.
was in the front yard.
Yeah.
And this particular one, the gentleman, he wasn't even letting the dog run around. He literally let the dog go from the garage to the car because they were headed somewhere.
Hmm.
But he didn't put the dog on a leash, and one of the neighbors turned him in. So,
Well,
Oh,
know your neighbors, know your laws.
right?
yeah. And training, of course, is always important as well. Recall, leash manners, all those things. So,
Absolutely.
as we're talking about these life-saving activities that you teach, so we know CPR on your pet is possible.
It's possible.
The anatomy on a human is much different. Uh, is it hard? I mean, it sounds like it because you are dealing with different anatomy and different. It's a different situation. So, can you elaborate on that for us?
It's incredibly very similar because they do have a heart, they have lungs, but things are definitely placed a little bit differently. So the how is the different part. And the fun thing with the animals is there's also different shapes and sizes, right? With humans, everyone pretty much, you lay them on their back and you push in the center of their chest, that kind of stuff. But the vast majority of our pets, it's going to be on their side. It's very different. And we talk about those differences, like my bully mix, he's round. So I actually have to do CPR differently on him than I would most other dogs, because most other dogs, their chest kind of comes more angled. So again, it's very different. But the concept's the same. You're still going to push hard, basically in the center of their chest. You got to know exactly where so that you don't do more damage than good. And then, yeah, we can still give breaths to these guys, but it's definitely more challenging than doing it on a human. So those are all the different things that we talk about in the class. Again, their tongue is very long.
Yeah.
So we actually have to pull the tongue out, which you don't usually do with a human before. That's one of the steps before you give a breath to, especially the doggies.
Is
So
is there a little difference in breeds? Like you talked about yours being round. Like I think about a corgi. People think of corgis as small dogs, but they're really not. They're
mm,
like medium dogs, but with no legs. But a lot of
right.
their up here, and we know this from because I'm that mom, ordering clothing and costumes
Uh-huh.
and things like that for events that you need an extra large in certain places, but you're gonna have to hem the leg part. So structure,
Buster's
I
like
think,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, he needs the extra large around the chest, but yeah, he's got short legs, not quite as short as a corgi, but he's got the short legs. So yeah, somebody like that, I actually, the animals' neutral position is usually on their side, right? So they can breathe easier. That's for most animals. That's how the position they're gonna be in when we do the CPR. But for a round one like him, to do the compressions, I actually have to roll him onto his back
Oh,
and
wow.
push on the sternum. So there's these extra steps depending on shape, and then some of them size. A lot of times, most of what we practice in class is going to be one-handed method for these, for most dogs, including, the corgis. But, the bigger they get, it ends up being a two-handed method, very similar to humans, human adults. So, and then we talk about the little guys, you got the teacups and that. And so that's a
Wow.
whole different thing, right?
So
'Cause
structure is part of it.
that's a lot of it,
Yeah.
actually. But the concept's still the same. That again, squeezing the heart, trying to move the blood, get some oxygen in there, all that stuff. The concepts are still the same. But the how gets fun depending on exactly who you're working on.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Imagine.
Which fur baby.
do you also train for cats?
Cats and dogs. The program that I'm using is Pet Tech
Okay.
program. It's a nationally recognized pet program. It's also AKC accepted, which
Okay.
is fun. And PACS, PACCS, I forget the acronym. It's another major national organized vetting program to, so that this is like a good program.
Right.
I didn't make it up. There's professionals that did that. I'm just sharing the information and the how part of it. And the people that take the class, they do get a certificate that says they've completed it, and it's valid for 2 years, very similar to a human program. So it's super exciting. But yeah, it, it's all about that why and staying up to date.
Right.
Especially if you have pets at home or you're in a business that brings pets in. I love, some of my regular clients are doggy daycares and groomers and, that sort of thing. I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably better for you if you're bringing your pet to a groomer or a pet sitter, etc., that is certified in CPR and in rescue.
Yep.
Now, I remember years and years and eons ago, I was a massage therapist, and of course, I needed to know CPR. And there was Red Cross created a mask. It's to
Mhm.
protect
Oh,
both
yeah.
people. For the breathing part, what do you do with the dog or with the dog?
Um,
Is there a mask?
so they do exist. They're hard to get. And
Okay.
some of the human versions of the face shield could potentially be used because the face shield is like a fancy piece of plastic, has a valve,
Right.
that kind of thing. So potentially you could use some of those, but I have to say most pet parents aren't going to bother.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You just need to get air in there. That's
Right.
Yeah.
you start getting air in there. That makes
Okay.
sense. So as we're talking about this structure, different,
Yeah.
how do you go forth? Are the dummies, the mannequins? I'm assuming those are specific
Oh
or
yeah.
different. Yeah.
So we do a lot of work on stuffies,
Brought
right?
examples, cute example. Those are
Right.
cuter than I expected them to
Yes.
be.
But I do, and not all the pet tech instructors do this, but I do like to have something that's a little bit firmer and a little more realistic for my students to kind of get a better idea of just how hard you're going to push. These
Right.
guys help us to know placement and counting and that sort of thing. But these, you actually have to push kind of hard on these, which in real life you do. right? You actually have to squeeze the heart. So these are some of my mannequins that I use in class. They're kind of fun.
Okay.
But yeah, my students told me not to get rid of these because they like holding them in class. And yes, I do wash them, so everybody gets a fresh one.
Yeah.
But safety too is a concern, not just bloodborne pathogen type of thing. These guys can't talk to us, and so they can't, when they're conscious in particular, they can't tell us what's wrong or when they're hurting. So one of the other things that we do talk about is actually muzzling. Again, I am not a proponent of using muzzles on a day-to-day basis, but in an emergency, any animal that's hurting or is about to be hurting because I got to move something or do a thing, can and will bite. And so
Fear
that is,
reaction. Mhm.
yeah, that is an absolute must. You must learn how to do that because you love your animals.
Right.
I've got some. I still have one lady in particular who she's been in my classes and stuff, and I love her dearly, but she hates even the concept. And I'm like, you need to do this. You
Mhm.
need. It's a need. It's a need.
So am I understanding that the muzzle is part of that process
The training process,
every
absolutely.
time? Okay.
Well,
Okay.
not, when you do CPR, obviously the animal's unconscious and that's not, but
Right.
when we talk about the first aid part of it, absolutely. We,
Yeah.
we practice how to basically jerry rig a muzzle in an emergency.
Okay.
It is a skill. It is one of the hands-on things that we do. We also talk about snout to tail assessment, uh, first of all, knowing what's normal. So this
Mhm.
is something I tell everybody, do it from day one. If you've never done it, go home and do it now.
Yeah.
Practice. I even suggest practicing these with your fur babies, just so they're not surprised when they're hurting, you know.
Get used to
Obviously,
the being felt around on and poked and kinda looked at.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My guys, they know what this is, and they're not, so if I have to use it, it's not a big surprise. And then that's just one extra thing in an emergency. They don't need that stress. Stress is a big thing with them. Again, not every pet parent knows the right and the wrong ways to communicate with your animal. And so we do talk a little bit about behaviors, yours and theirs. um, yeah, there's just so much. There's just so much that we cover.
Well, you said you were talking about cats. Man, I
Mhm.
I can't imagine of course, but if you're performing CPR on a cat, when the cat comes to and realizes what's going on, that whole situation seems terrifying to me because cats don't like surprises.
They definitely have a different attitude.
Yeah.
When they're conscious, this isn't going to work on a cat. So we talk about other ways to restrain cats, and again, certain different shapes. You got pugs and other guys with the flat noses. You can't. This isn't going to work. So we talk about other ways to restrain them. Um, but yeah, I have to say, at least in the CPR setting, they don't. Most animals don't typically wake up like excited. It takes them a while to kind of start breathing and wake up and all of that. So
Yeah.
good thing there.
Yeah.
But we do talk about different ways to restrain and being prepared for that potential in no matter dog, cat, size, whatever, that potential that they could wake up and be surprised. So keeping, we call it danger at arm's length. That is, again, something we do talk about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you're doing this work. Yeah.
Thank you. Glad I can.
Yeah.
But
So go ahead.
I was gonna say I even spent some time on a ranch. I lived on a ranch for a while, so we had some bigger animals too. Don't talk about CPR on a horse, but necessarily, but definitely a lot of first aid there.
Yeah, our friend Tawny from Shade Out DM is a horse trainer. So
Mhm.
she's told us a little bit about like working. I mean, it's to me definitely you'd have to get comfortable with something like that. Like I'm used Yeah, I mean, I'm used to like corgis when we have first aid or emergencies. I have a process, right? I'm familiar with their structure and how to handle them so I don't cause worse damage. But for an animal that's so much bigger than you, that just you'd have to
Even
know
in
what
Newfoundland, come on, Newfies are big.
yeah, they're about a horse size, like a small horse, like a pony. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what is something unusual that that we might learn in your class that we wouldn't expect?
Well, I mentioned the muzzles.
Mhm.
That's something we don't do in the human class. Although maybe we should. No, I'm just kidding.
Right?
Um,
We all had the same thought. We all had the same thought.
I mean, again, that snout to tail assessment, those are two of the big ones that I think people just wouldn't expect if they're used to a human class and then, discussing it there. But in the longer class, we do talk about geriatric care. So, the older guys, um, nutrition, dental care. Those are things in the longer class that, again, you wouldn't get that in a human class. We don't talk about stuff like that, but it is important. And I do highly recommend the longer class. It's interesting. I've found even people who thought they were pretty well prepared, they come through that class and they're like, wow, I hadn't really thought about. And, there's always something.
Yeah, and if you have anxiety, this is just a little PSA. My problem is I'm an information hound. If something gives me anxiety, I will read, and I'm sure there are a lot of people like me. I will read everything I can find on the subject. I will find people that have dealt with whatever it is that I'm learning about, and I will talk to them at length and drive them crazy with trying to get information. So I'm not alone, but part of that too is as you learn more, being aware is good. There's that thin line between being aware and being neurotic. And personally, I have not learned to, toe that correctly.
No.
I'm still on the neurotic side. But the more that I learn, the more that I worry about, right? Because, oh, I didn't know that could happen. Now I know
Well,
that can happen. But
ignorance is bliss, right? Yeah.
yeah, but it's also a relief that, well, now I know that that could happen. For instance, when Mortimer got hold of that sago nut.
Oh yeah.
Mortimer, I don't have sago palms. I'm aware of how toxic they are. But one blew into my yard. We had a storm and I caught him with it. And I thought, oh no, where in the world did you get this? Of course, he chewed the skin off of the seed, which is one of the worst parts.
Yeah.
Um, and vets are overloaded right now, just like rescues. And this was a few months ago, but vets are overloaded like rescues and shelters are. And so I had to call 4 different vets to get them in. And I had to beg and cajole to get them in. I'm like, look, I know I can induce vomiting, but I don't know if I need to do it in this way. I really need the help of a medical professional.
Right.
This is an emergency.
Yeah.
And I did get him care, and he's okay, thank goodness.
Yay.
But from what I understand, things like sago palms, it's like antifreeze and then sago palms. Those are the two things that just a little bit
Well,
may not turn out
any
well.
any kind of bulb is just as toxic. If you have somebody that plants tulip bulbs or narcissus or any of those bulb plants, just forget it. They're just super toxic. Oleanders, if you got a chewer,
Oh my
those are
gosh.
nasty, right?
It's
Bougainvillea,
yeah.
I mean, those are beautiful landscape plants that are pretty common around here.
Mhm.
Anyway, there's lots of things. Anything with a pit or a major seed like that, if the seed itself is usually toxic,
Yeah.
avocado pits, anything like that. So again, if you got a chewer, you're in trouble.
Right. And
Um,
corgis eat everything. But yeah, that's to that point. You were talking about being aware and knowing and learning. But I was kind of astounded. We did an episode on it on toxic plants because after that happened, I thought, I'm kind of surprised at how many people don't know about these. I'm hyper aware of what they eat. I had one corgi that was a rescue corgi that is like she had pica. Everything went in her mouth. And it was just I was always just I've learned that
those
anything that
sensory dogs.
yeah, anything that can go in the mouth needs to absolutely not be within reach of them. It doesn't matter how closely you watch them, they will find a way to get into it.
Yes.
So I have learned that, but I've also learned at length what's toxic and what is concern and what isn't. And so I thought, gosh, this awareness is really good. And a lot of it is just awareness. Like, people don't know.
Right.
So phone numbers are super important too. I mean,
Yeah.
there are poison hotlines for pets.
Yes.
They do cost money when you
Yep.
call them, unlike the human one.
Right.
But what I do suggest is find out the number of the closest 24-hour vet to you, because typically they will at least answer questions, even if they're busy and they can't necessarily take your pet in. They will answer questions and then they will tell you where to go.
Yes.
So those are two really important. Yes, you can use the poison hotline, but because they're nonprofits, they do charge. So again, if you're somebody who can't maybe afford it, this other option could potentially be a thing. Plus, if you do have to take them somewhere, then they know what's coming in.
Right.
It used to be $60. It is now 75. And my last 2 ingestions I've had, which I am the most fastidious, am I not? They still find things to get into. But the last 2 ingestions I've had, the emergency vets, of course, it never happens in the middle of the day when your vet happens to
course
have it
not.
open. Right. The emergency vets, actually, the last 2 times this has happened, although we knew what the toxin was, we knew how much it was, we knew, we had all that information, they still wanted to, in both instances, the last 2 instances, wanted to talk to poison control and
They all do.
they open up what they call that fee you're talking about. They're opening up a case on your pet.
Always.
And the last 2 times, so just listener, viewer,
Yeah.
hopefully you don't have to deal with this, but if you do, poison control, and I will drop that number in the comments. It's on my favorites in my phone. I suggest you save it as well. Hopefully you don't need it, but again, for hungry corgis starving all the time, eat everything, I have it on my favorites, but that's what's happened the last couple of times. I've had to open a case, even though we've gone to the emergency vet. They said go ahead and call them and open a case.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that may be more and more common now.
Yeah, I hope not.
Well,
But
I mean that they work in
it may
conjunction.
be a legal thing. Yeah.
They work in conjunction with each other. I mean, the good thing is that you sort of have a board with your pet that way, because you have the veterinarian that's working there with poison control, as well as the one that's treating your pet, and they're communicating and they're documenting. So that's the good part about it. But I was surprised. Both times it was the same thing. Yes, we know what this is. You have it here. You have all the information. They still want to open a case and work with them. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting. Things change.
Yeah, things change. What else do you learn in the longer class? How long is the long class? And do you do these classes online?
So the Pet Tech program is designed to be an in-person training so that you get the hands-on skills, right?
Okay, makes sense.
There is potential that we could set up a Zoom sort of thing if I can make sure that, the students have certain materials on hand so that we could, we can work in a system much like this, so that we could do that. I haven't had anybody do it yet, but we could, because I get it. There's different situations, or if somebody's, potentially far away from me, we could figure that out so that we can make it work. I need to make sure students have books, so that's easy. I can mail that sort of thing, and certain materials I can mail. There would be an extra fee, of course, for that, but I can totally do that.
Yeah.
My human classes, I have something, the underwriters, if you will, they have certain things already set up so that it's much easier for me to do that, but I can totally do that. So Pet Tech designs a 5-hour program and an 8-hour program. I have to say, most of the time, it doesn't take me that long to teach the classes, but the 5-hour program is the CPR and the first aid. That's the core class. And we do cover, like I said, some of the skills that I mentioned, like the muzzling and the snout to tail, and of course the CPR and a lot of the first aid. And there's a little bit of behavior stuff in there. The longer, what they call the 8-hour program, is all of that, plus the geriatrics, the nutrition, the dental care. And in geriatrics, we do talk about end of life and that sort of thing. So, have a plan, all of that. Be ready.
Well, I'm glad you brought up virtual options, though, because our audience, we have people that listen in Germany, Japan, some other places. So this is good information for them, just kind of all over. And I will share on the screen, stayingalivellc.com is the website you can go to for more information, and I will drop it into the comments.
If we have just a quick second, I have 2 really quick stories. I won't share the long version, but people that have actually saved their animals using the information in my classes. One was a choking situation. She saved her Briard. And yeah, she's a raw feeder, and she choked on a bone. And then another one was one of the groomers that I teach at pretty regular. They had a little nervous thing come in, and he vomited and aspirated on the groomer's table and went down. And the groomer knew exactly what to do. He started CPR, and the owner called the pet parents back to, like, hey, try not to freak you out, but I need you to take your pet to the vet right now. And so they came back. The groomer was actually doing CPR in the vehicle on the way to the vet. And actually the little fur baby started breathing right before they got to the vet. So he was able to pass him off, and he got extra care, obviously, and he's doing well. So yay.
Oh, we love good stories. Yes, we do. So a quick question as we're talking about this. When you like at the vet and things, they have you sign a waiver if is this CPR or do you give us permission to perform CPR? I know with humans, there's a risk of broken ribs, bruising, things like kind of permanent and not so permanent damage that can happen. I'm assuming the same risk apply here.
Absolutely. But again, it depends. I mean, I have a story, where CPR worked and it probably shouldn't have happened. And that was one with my mom. Years ago, she had a older dog, and he didn't come back to the door when she expected. And she's like, wow, he's been out there a while. So she found him in the yard and, went into mama bear mode because he wasn't breathing. So she started pumping on his chest, and he did start breathing. But he had been apparently down for a while because it was quite evident that he had brain damage. So you have to balance, and we do talk about that in class, that, maybe with an older guy, maybe it's not, especially an unwitnessed event like that, maybe it's not a good time to do it. But with these witnessed events, absolutely, you can save a life very quickly, just like the one at the groomer or the choking situation with the Briard. It's perspective. Right. And so, yeah, also the age of the dog, there's lots of things to take into consideration when you are doing that. And I realize you have to do it very quickly. But those are factors that play into your decision to do it. So yeah, damage can happen.
Yeah. How long is it without oxygen before you worry about brain damage in pets?
There's no set number of minutes. But I will say, from the moment they collapse, every 60 seconds before CPR is started, there's a 10% decrease in chance of survival.
Yeah, you get
So,
brain death. Yeah.
right. So 2 minutes, 80% chance. That's, again, if you know how long they've been down.
Right.
But if we wait 5-6 minutes, it's touch and go there. So, like, is it worth it at that point? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Willow, my cat, when Willow, when it was her time, she was actually home. So we didn't, she wasn't at the vet. She wasn't euthanized. I just noticed she was having trouble breathing. And, within a second, you knew it was her time. You knew she had to go.
Mhm.
And you want to do something and you just can't.
Right.
It's worse to do it. So that's
Right.
an important distinction. And
Yes.
knowing that is a really important distinction, and being prepared for that distinction is
Yes.
huge.
Being ready to just love on them and
Mhm.
let them go. Yeah. It's a tough
Well,
decision.
we
Yeah.
love the work you're doing. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming to educate us. And it
Yes.
is Staying Alive, LLC.com on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, which we do recommend if you're listening that you do take a moment to go to our YouTube page, because she did share some really adorable CPR mannequins that were way cuter than I expected those to
Yes.
be.
Very much.
So you
Yes.
want to see,
There's some more back there too. Look.
yeah, so cute. Oh my gosh, and like different breeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah, super cute. Well, thank you so much, Dina. We really appreciate it. We hope that you have a good rest of your evening, and we really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very
Yes.
much for having me. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Do you feel smarter now?
I do. I
do. I feel like I'm going to have more things to be neurotic about.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't.
I'm going to take the class, though. Everybody at Corgi Town needs to take the class. So,
Okay.
yeah. Well, we hope that this episode gave you some really useful information. Again, I will put Dina's website into the comments so that you can go yourself and check it out. We do recommend that you look into this program. It sounds like some training that every pet owner should have.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. There are programs in your area. And as Dina said, concessions can be made. At least know something.
if you can't do it in person, something is better than nothing.
Well, and being aware,
Yes,
being aware
being
of the
aware.
situation, the more we learn, the more power we have the more empowered we are. The more we know,
Absolutely.
the more empowered we are to give our babies the best care and be the most prepared. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. We are here for you every Thursday, all things corgi and dog lifestyle. Candy, Chuckles in my lap, Cat, Digby, Mortimer.
somewhere.
Oh, did he go? Uh-oh. What's Digby getting into?
And there's Mortimer, and there's Booger, and there's all of the
Hammer?
pets.
Yeah, Hammer somewhere.
Hammer
Okay.
somewhere.
Have a good night. We'll see you next week.
Bye.